everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Plant Planet Plate. Today I'm here with Minazay as per usual and also my dear friend and colleague Aziz. Today we're going to be doing an episode about the importance of nature-based or integrated education and how that links with our project Plant Planet Plate as well as other different projects around the world that feature ethnobotany. Aziz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Tao and Munize. I'm really happy to be on this podcast and having a session with you. First of all, I want to introduce myself. Of course, you know me, but our audience don't know about me. My name is Muhammad Abdul Aziz. I belong to South Waziristan, the area located in north and western part of Pakistan. I grew up in a remote village known as Karama. I got my early education at a government school, and at the same school, I got secondary school studies. In 2006, my family migrated to Dera Ismail Khan from South Waziristan. It was the time when Taliban took over the area. So it was like a kind of migration, it kind of displacement. And this was the time that I finished my secondary school studies and I had to go outside, like from Waziristan, because I have to join a college. In 2006, I got admitted in a government college in Dera Ismail Khan. I finished my higher secondary studies and bachelor studies in a government college at Dera Ismail Khan. In 2010, I moved to Kohat, where I did my master and MPhil from Kohat University of Science and Technology. I focused, like in my master thesis, I focused on medicinal plants, and that the study was like about exploring the biochemistry of medicinal plants in order to check them. Like we selected some solvents, some biochemicals in order to test them against certain bacteria, multi-drug resistant bacteria. It was like the first time where we were introduced to the term of medicinal plants. Before that, we didn't hear about medicinal plants. So it was the first time that our professors taught us about medicinal plants. But it was like a quite strange, and we were thinking about medicinal plants that maybe these are some specific plants not found everywhere, right? So maybe it was in narrowness. You can see like it maybe the limitations of the coursework that was previously taught by our professors or like at school or at college. So it was like a very new and master, like in Pakistan we say it MPhil, because master studies is equal to 2 years, and then again we have to do like MPhil, like an American system maybe. Uh, and then I completed my MPhil in 2016. After that, I joined a college where I lectured like the subject of biology to secondary and higher secondary students. After and by like at the end of my MPhil studies, I got interested in ethnobotany, and I start work like an ethnobotany with my colleague Amir Hassan Khan. He is also doing PhD in ethnobotany. He is also from Bajwar. It is also another tribal area which is very close to Afghanistan border. So we worked together for years. And basically, I started writing research article, and the first research article I published in Journal of Ethnopharmacology, the elemental analysis of like selected. There were 70 to 80 medicinal plants. We were analyzed the elements, the different elements like the macro elements and micro elements. It was like a kind of review. So that was the first publication. And then I got interested in ethnobotany and started work with my colleague. So most of the time since I was engaged in teaching activities at Dera Ismail Khan, and my friend was like, he's doing some field work. He was doing field work and I was trying like to write research articles. So it was like a collaborative work, and we did it for 3 to 4 years. And, like in 2018, I got the PhD scholarships at University of Gastronomic Sciences, Polenzo.
That's where,
And
just to interrupt, I'm sorry, Aziz. This is actually
yeah.
where Aziz and I met. We were the only two international students in the first PhD cycle of, yeah, Università degli Studi di Scienze Gastronomiche, which is this University of Gastronomic Sciences If you don't know about it, it's the Slow Food Movements University in Pollenzo, which is in northern Italy in Piemonte, where you can find Barolo wine and, white truffles, black truffles, and very, very good cheese. Just to give the context, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
you really, left your hometown, through migration and other different fluxes, and then you really got deep into the science of plants, would you say?
yeah. And
Which the
in
food.
that, I was a bit confused, because I had three different subjects, chemistry, zoology, and botany. So I was thinking, at least for 2 years, which major domain should I adopt? And then at the last, I decided to go towards botany. So it was my choice. It was not something because Muniza, maybe you know about the fact that in Pakistan, weaker students are going toward
Yeah.
the right.
Yeah,
It's very,
it's just a weird division. Especially subjects like zoology and botany, they're not those kind of higher achieving ones. But actually, it's surprising. I was at a family lunch a few weeks ago in Pakistan because I just visited, and there was three of them who all studied botany at Karachi University. And I got really excited because I said, "Oh my God, I'm finally doing plants and I want to talk to you more."
yeah,
So yeah, I think that has to break that sort of misconception, especially
yeah,
in our part of the world.
That's very interesting for both of you because when I was studying plant humanities with Dumbarton Oaks, we had this conversation about how in the world of living beings and biology, right? Plants are very taken for granted.
Mm.
There's this quote, plant blindness, but I personally, after reading a few articles, in the recent years, it's pivoted to plant awareness because it's not that we don't see them, we just don't acknowledge them. And I find it interesting that, quote, weaker students lean towards botany. What does that say about me? I've always liked it.
Yeah, and I think I also want to get to that other part where Aziz mentioned medicinal plants, and we all think that, oh, this must be some kind of special plant, not realizing that actually a lot of them are, everyday, especially tropical sort of flowering plants and plants that are all around us. They're not these special plants, and that's sort of something new that I came to being part of this project, and I started to realize a lot of plants have medicinal value, i.e., healing or therapeutic.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like for me, it's kind of, I don't know, like I'm the contrarian here. I'm the opposite. I trip over a dandelion that's like poking through the asphalt of pavement in a city, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is really good for urinary issues. And I think it's because, well, I don't know. Like Aziz, you can also respond to me in Manizeh, but like I grew up in the suburbs in the United States, so. Like I'm very accessible to larger city urban environments, but I also have a lot of national parks around me, so there was this kind of easy movement between. And I wouldn't say that I don't know, I live in a rural area. That's not something that I would say that I did, but when I went to college, my undergraduate, I went to rural Maryland and I knew what it was like to have an empty space of nature, so-called nature. But I think that for me, I pay attention to the cross classification of different plants as useful so much simply because I paid attention to them more being stuck in suburbia in an urban environment. You kind of miss the green, I guess.
No, actually,
What
it
about you?
depends. It depends on the context or the nature of education. Like in
Yeah.
Pakistan, there is no concept of study trips. Of course, there are trips, but they're not like pure study trips. But people are just enjoying those trips, like students that to go on trips from botanical sciences. Maybe the main problem is the decontextualized education, right? Until BSc, my bachelor, I finished my bachelor. I didn't see, a very least number of plants I could see in the surrounding environment. And like in Pakistan, we have also another problem. I was supposed like to discuss it later, but in Pakistan, like Munize, maybe like you are more aware of the problem that recently people have started like to build societies, right? Houses and buildings,
Yeah.
eliminating the green spaces, right?
Hmm.
So students, right, at least when I'm teaching in my class, because science subject I teach at my school, so the kids are the students of grade 3 and 4, they even don't know the plants that grow in their surroundings. So I think that they are completely like you in they are completely, disconnected, not from nature, but from their culture, I think. It's a big mess. hmm? We cannot
Yeah. Hopefully not that big.
we
But
cannot
I think
quantify.
yeah, I think it's what Tao mentioned about this idea of plant blindness. Yes, we know there's greenery there and we know the jasmine flower and, the rose flower, but you might be missing that depth of information. And I think the other thing is also we are aware of curative properties of plants. Of course, turmeric being a big example. Pakistani food and like our cuisine is full of turmeric, it used in different ways, and it's definitely what we call a healing plant, but it might not necessarily be used that often as that. And I think we faced some of that doing our work in Cambodia, where we would talk to our interviewees about healing properties of plants and do you use it for the healing or do you use it for the taste?
Yeah, and I wanted to have some follow-up questions, but first respond to the idea
Sure.
of eating or healing. Actually, our supervisor, Andrea Peroni, did really nice work with a bunch of colleagues earlier, maybe like 20 years ago, Aziz, I think, or roughly about 20 years ago, about how a lot of societies look at food and medicine as along a spectrum. Depending on the situation, then they'll decipher it one way or another. I know that when I was doing my PhD research in Cambodia in Siem Reap province, there was a lot of like, we don't separate it. It's sort of all the same. It either is or it isn't useful for the health, but people just eat them because they like the taste. And I just wanted to go back a little bit because Aziz, you mentioned about the students that you were teaching at your school. Would you like to introduce like your school and your project and its initiatives before we move on?
Yes, actually, I am running a school in the heart of Dera Ismail Khan. It's a small city. So I started the school in February 2024. I
Yeah.
finished my postdoctoral studies in October 2022. And the whole year, like the 2023, it was like quite a challenging year for me. I was not able to even decide where should I go. I was struggling for different positions and thinking about the possible areas that I can move on to. And being a researcher, it is very difficult, like to disconnect yourself from research. It is very difficult. And since when I was in grade 6, one day our teacher asked me that if you grew up, what will you become? So I said, I will become a teacher. So that was a thing that from my very childhood, I had the passion like to teach, like to be a teacher, maybe a professor, like a lecturer, but to be like to teach about something, It was like from the very beginning when I was in my early school grades. So one day in February, I think it was like January, one day I was sitting with my friend here in Dera Ismail Khan, and I was like a bit confused, It was like a transition period for me, and was thinking that I'm thankful to him because he suggested me an idea that Aziz, why you are wasting your time? So you have the ability, you have like the potential, and why not you open a school? And then after a few days of thinking, I decided to um, open a school. Of course, there are some limitations because you have to follow some specific rules and regulations because the school had to be registered with PISRA, Private Schools Regulatory Authority, and you have to follow specific courses because you have registered your school. And then what I was thinking that of course I will follow these standard and conventional subjects, I will teach them, but along with that this is like the perfect time that I can avail this opportunity to bring a new subject to my school. So after a few days of thinking and discussion with my colleagues and or like overviewing the overall situation, I decided like to introduce a course on people and place. So it's like, it's a very huge title. So under this title, I can do a lot of things. I can do ethnobotany, I can do research, I can teach everything that comes under the people and place. So from that day, little by little, I'm trying like to make my students like aware of the importance of nature, right? And importance of plants, importance of soil, importance of place. Sometimes we also arrange outdoor classrooms, but as I mentioned before, it is quite challenging because like green spaces are very limited. And for that purpose, I had I have like there is very is a little area where weeds, grasses, and I have like um, there are some plants that sapling. There are some sapling that I bring from nursery, and I try like to make a nature corner because
Oh, that's nice.
it's quite challenging like to bring students out of the town every day.
Mm.
But at least
So,
we can give them a sense of belonging with nature, with plants, with weeds. Before I was thinking like to make this area a kind of park, a kind of garden. But now I realize the fact that it should be a kind of wild area, right? Wild, where every like different kind of plants, and we can sometimes we do there and do meditation, right? And sometimes we are trying like to practice like how to smell nature,
mm.
right? And so these are the different activities along with the teaching them conventional subjects. I'm trying like to at least get them engaged in a possible way. And for the rest too, like there are quite challenges, like financial challenges. And still I am paying from my pocket, like the
Mm.
rent is like a building of 28 Marla. Munize, you know about Marla, 28
Oh
Marla.
no.
You should
So
search about it.
what we have missed is actually the name of the school, if people do want to look
Uh,
it up. So it's Crestwood
Crestwood.
School.
Crestwood School, Crestwood.
Yes. And so we will sort of make some links available that people can visit, whoever is listening to the
Visit,
podcast.
yeah, visit, or if you have a donation link or something for fundraising, I'm sure that our listeners would love to kind of, we're plant people, we're
Mm.
geographers, we are ethnobotanists, we are people who are just curious about
Yeah.
the intersections of people, place, and plants. So I
Mm.
think that would be really lovely.
And
Go ahead, Manase.
yeah, I mean, I think for me, it sounds like such a great initiative, also very innovational in the sense that this is not traditional school education that a lot of people would be having. And it's such a great initiative to have a course called People and Place, because I guess this part of Pakistan is also where a lot of people have moved around, families in the last 20 years, I have moved and there's a lot of IDPs in this KPK, right? Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So you have people coming from different places. You also have people from Afghanistan in this area because the border is quite porous. So what a great sort of inclusive way, and using plants as the connector. So really we go back to our theme of nature-based learning, and you are almost bringing these people, like the students from different parts of Pakistan, especially the north, together under the guise of plants. Amazing.
So
Yes.
if I may add, like, the goal of our project itself is really to highlight ethnobotanical legacies in Cambodia, but we always say that our approach that we take it, but also like Dumbarton Oaks and many other organizations which kind of practice this celebration of different relationships between plants, people, and place. Um, what sort of, I don't know, how do you pick and develop topics to create this nature-based education? Maybe it would be helpful if we all sort of shared what it means for us to have an education which is nature-based, nature-led, nature-integrated, nature-guided. For me, I think that we had a lot of field trips. So, like growing up in suburban United States, a lot of field trips. I was very fortunate to be from Maryland, so I was always at the Smithsonian National History Museum. We had sort of events where students were asked to go outside and reflect on things. I remember two specific instances. Once we had a nature poetry walk. So we walked through a forest with our teachers and we were asked to take observations and kind of write poetry, write stories about things that may have happened in nature. I think we were like, I want to say we were in grade school, so anywhere from 8 to 10 years old, where we're really writing or learning how to write and tell stories. And then during, I think it was eighth grade, so I was 13, we had something called outdoor education. And our teachers took us to a campsite and we were doing nature walks and finding like, scavenger pieces of nature and also reacting in that way. So it was a time for us to really, go out, appreciate transcendentalist literature where there's this big movement in the US literature to really go back into nature. So, like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Walden and things like that. So, there's like a reappreciation that came hand in hand with obviously colonization and westward expansion. But the whole point was these kids are really out of touch. And if for them to have a thorough education and understand their surroundings, they should probably go out and touch things. And we also did things like understanding pollution in local environments. So we were like in a stream with like little wet boots and learning what sorts of creatures live there and the plants. So that's for me is what I think is sort of a nature guided or integrated education where, like Aziz said, it's about contextualizing the person, but understanding these distinctions of, I don't know, society, civilization, development, but also what is nature. And I find it particularly interesting, Aziz, for Crestwood School that you explained how you want to bring the students to nature and you want to bring things that are wild, but it's in a garden. So for me, mentally, I was like, how do you take wild nature and package it and put it in a place where there's development and architecture? So yeah, these are my reflections. And would you two, either Munazeh or Aziz, want to respond?
So
Yeah.
I will say that I definitely didn't grow up. Obviously, a lot of my schooling was in Karachi, so definitely was very, very far away from nature. Pollution, yes, a lot of pollution, but but I think it's something still that the school that I did go to had an appreciation for some of these elements. Like we would learn a lot about kind of nature and looking after trees and all of that, but very basic, especially at that time. I went to school in the 90s. But I think it's something more that I started thinking about when I started working for Green Shoots and we started doing work in schools in Cambodia. And the main thing was that when I am in London and I'm doing work with young people and nature, it's very much bringing nature to urban kids. But when you're in Cambodia in the countryside, you're with kids that are in nature. Things don't, talking about manure and stuff does not ick them out, but what you want is to connect them on a deeper level and look at it from a cultural side. So I think that's really when I look at nature-based education or integrating nature in education, it's about the daily experience of nature, but making them more aware of it. So and I think that's what we have been trying to do with Green Shoots since we set up. And now with Plant Planet Plate, it just really solidifies that experience. And so I'm definitely doing it more from the educator side of things. Didn't experience it much from the learner side of things, but which makes it more exciting because I see everything as an experience for myself and for the students we work with. How about you, Aziz?
Yes, like it is a very interesting question. The area which I grew up, like South Waziristan, at that time we were kids and we have like no such appreciation for the nature. So although we were engaged with like with traditional agriculture, horticultural, I am also involved like in pastoralism when we were children, right? So we were trying like to bring our cattle and our herds to mountains and trying like to grow fields and gardens and like this kind of stuff is very is very normal in the like in tribal areas and also in mountain areas. As far as here uh, the like the students of my school, like here, like in if I'm talking about Dera Ismail Khan, so it's like a very a quite it needs a kind of research, and now I am trying like to first do like a kind of survey, maybe like to involve the parents of like my students in order to sort out, because it is like my school is inside like in an urban area. There is no place without like only my small nature corner. There is no close place that I bring them out and then subject them to experience nature frequently, right? Because maybe in a month I can bring them out because it needs a lot of like energy, and also like this is also there is also a challenge because maybe sometimes parents are thinking in a different way. The eco-conscious level of the community is very low in such areas. We are talking about SDGs, but in my city, people and students do not know SDGs. What is SDGs? So last week I have tried like to teach them about SDGs. So I'm trying like to bring them slowly and slowly. So I'm trying to convince the parents of the students, do a kind of research, and based on that research we can model like a curriculum for the people in place. Although we are trying our best, like what is our capacity and capability, what are the resources we are trying to adopt, but most of the time it is a challenging job. Like we are not open, we have to follow like the daily schedule to teach the other subjects to our kids. Otherwise, one day we were on a walk, awareness walk in the city of Dera Ismail Khan with my kids. So we were we were close to finish our walk. So I saw some parents and they looked at their children and kids and they were quite unhappy. And they were saying that, why did you bring them out? Why did you bring our children out of school? So this is something they were thinking about, that this is maybe like a political agenda or something like very, very political, maybe something very dangerous. So you are trying to publicize your school. So these kind of thoughts and yes, kind of challenges we are facing, but I'm trying like to accommodate with them. Now I am trying to conduct a deep study with parents, with children's, in order to find a way how we can adopt in such like, in urban context that I am facing now. So maybe if you have some comments or feedback, because I'm very confused. If my school was located in an area which is green out, inside a field and inside a forest, that is very, very easy like to bring them out. Maybe like from this classroom, you can make them observe the nature.
I find this very
Yeah, so
interesting. Minase, would you like to begin? Sorry for interrupting.
no, I was just thinking of what you are facing is this idea of urban nature, and I think you're of course trying to open the school up to a very different way of learning and involve the parents. But sometimes the real challenge is convincing parents that, this is a way of education. One thing that I've experienced this time in Karachi was that a lot of the trees in Karachi or hopefully the local provincial government is giving them a special status. They're really old banyan trees. And I thought that's just such a nice way that if school kids in a city can experience, I have not been to Dera Ismail Khan, so I can't say much, but find the nature that we can sort of, or you can sort of expose them to, and it could start with just trees and then other plants and slowly. So yeah, going back to this idea of like having studied at the Slow Food University and our research being slow research, it's how do we take those slower steps and kind of engage
Yes.
parents and show the value of it. We at times in our project in Cambodia also face that, where there is a state school and sort of this is official education, and anything outside of it is extracurricular, whereas we're coming from a point of view as educators that shouldn't be extracurricular. It should be streamlined and be part of the daily education, because as an experience, it's more wholesome. So yeah, maybe do that survey of what nature is available at your doorstep. And I have a funny anecdote about this from Siem Reap, where we had been in the Agri-Tech Centre for Cambodia for a while, and I had found, this was a few years ago, and I had found this red fruit. It's like they call it a Jamaican cherry. I'll find the actual name for it. And our staff Sarin told me that, oh, this is edible. And I was like, this is delicious. And then I went to Siem Reap, and there was two volunteers with me from the Agri-Tech Centre. And suddenly we're in Siem Reap, and all we see are those trees, and we're the only random sort of foreigners picking fruits and eating them. And then I was like, yeah, once you notice nature and you're aware of it, then you do see it everywhere. And I think that's that hook, and finding kind of that as the engagement way. So yeah, maybe also do a survey of what nature is available to you. And I'm sure, like you have your little corner, then you'll see that the same plants are in different parts. Maybe kids can do a homework and make a list of all the plants that they see in a weekly basis, and that's their homework. But also,
Maybe I was thinking about like making herbariums, right? To give assignment for home to collect at least 5 to 10 plants, write their names,
yeah,
write their uses. Maybe they should ask from their elders, from their family members, right? Also try like to, so there are many questions could be linked with the collecting these different plants. So maybe in a way,
yeah, I like that.
For sure. I think also Manase's comment is about how you once you recognize specific plants, you never forget. A good example would be when I arrived in the Netherlands, and I have a friend named Sebastian, and he took me foraging for wild garlic, Allium ursinum, right, bear's garlic. And he took me to Bundelbos, which is a Dutch forest, but if you know anything about sort of the natural organization of the Netherlands, everything is quite cut and dry. Like these are places that are natural, and these are the integrated urban spaces. So I was very like keen on harvesting or some foraging some Bear's garlic this past year, and I was riding my bike with my partner Pedro like through a very like paved road area, Aziz. Like it's a park, but it's just some trees and the houses are on the other side. And I completely stopped our bike ride because I saw from the corner of my eye, like there was some stream and moisture, and I thought, ooh, I bet there's some bear's garlic somewhere. And then I saw the white flowers, and I just jumped off my bike and ran to it. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna pick just enough so we can eat it, but some to also leave behind. I also wanted to comment in relation to the context that you are working in, Aziz. I feel, Minaze, that even though we're having similar approaches and arguably a similar kind of affinity for plant humanities, we have different types of perspectives in our community for sure. Because when we did our field work last year, like we found so much information in terms of working knowledge amongst children, like
Yeah.
children and adolescents. And I was very, very impressed. I kept thinking, these kids know what they're talking about. These are quote country kids, and they are proudly, happily like that. They know the plants, they know the fungi, they know wild fauna, they know everything. but we also within our team, like Mr. Lewin, our head gardener at the Agri-Tech Centre, when we were talking to him and his wife, they said that they like to transplant so-called wild plants into their house gardens so that their kids could understand what they look like. And they faced some difficulties in transplanting because of soil, of course, and environment. Context is important. But they were very much like dedicating parts of their life and ways of being to teaching them directly. So, yeah, I guess I don't know how much our insights on that would be helpful to you because it's complete opposite type of community response.
But the other thing is we worked a lot on edible plants. So it changes because you're actually eating them and you're using them daily in your cuisine or what you're cooking. So maybe that also has a different role to play when you sort of look at edible plants. I think the experience might be much different in a smaller town like around Siem Reap or something where the kids are invariably a bit more urban than because we are quite rural. Although funnily enough, we are also close to a border and just very, like the Pakistan-Afghanistan border is around Dera Ismail Khan. We are close to the Thai border, but it's not as porous one way. But yeah, I think edible plants, urban nature. Yes, we had edible plants on our list more, so it was easier to maybe engage because it's something that you could be eating. You know more about it, and yeah, kids go and have their hopling, walking around and eating a plant.
Yeah, Aziz, one question I have for you. So, your students and the types of plants that you bring to your nature corner, are they plants that just grow in the area? Are they not utilitarian in any way? Because I think that we are very anthropocentric, right? Like we only care about plants that have some sort of impact on us, whether they can heal us, they nourish us, or they can kill us.
Oh,
These are
they
kind
look
of
pretty.
three,
Yeah.
or they look pretty, yeah, and that's pretty much what plant humanities is, like those interactions of us finding significance, use, or just some sort of relation with the plants. So what sorts of plants are in your nature corner?
Actually, like it was a barren land when I started my school. And later, like in July, I brought some saplings and planted in my nature corner. Before, the idea was like to grow grass, like a kind of garden. For playing children, I just like to see and for aesthetic purposes. But
Mm.
now, if you talk about the medicinal uses, but they're not very famous for medicine. These are just plants, giving the sense that we are part of nature. Nature is part of us in other way, right? So it is like a kind of different grasses, weeds, and there are like these saplings, they are like growing. Maybe like they will be like in 1 or 2 years, they would be trees.
Okay.
So in a way, we cannot say that these are edible plants or medicinal plants, but we can say these are just plants so to give a sense of belonging, like to promote a sense of belonging among students, how to like protect nature without any, having any utilitarian status. Hmm?
Mm.
Okay, so it's mostly about sort of creating a space where you can have like nature contact and connectedness, right? And just really kind of, I don't know, subconsciously, but very actively get students excited and in like stewardship of nature and protection of nature and, you
And
know,
I was
go.
maybe sorry to interrupt. And I was also thinking to make like this nature corner an outdoor classroom
Mm.
to build it in a more, aesthetically also like that shows wilderness at the same time should be a classroom when on and off students would be taught about nature
Yeah.
in this area.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a place where if you go a bit more microscopic, attracting pollinators, if you really look over time, just even actually if you observe over time how the space changes,
Yeah.
seasons, and sort of, it's as it grows, what more bounty does it bring kind of thing. It sounds a bit
Like,
cheesy, but you know, it's the space changes, and with it, how the students can perhaps relate to it. When it was early on, it's a bit like, oh, this is just random grass, but oh, I know this grass now, or I can see more butterflies or other sort of bees or things.
Yeah,
That's
we can see
true.
like in the morning there are like different kind of birds are coming
Yeah.
inside,
Oh, beautiful.
giving like different kind of like sounds. So it's like very interesting. And maybe like one day I will record a video and will like
Please do.
you can see like how nature like is beautiful, but we are forgetting it, huh?
Yeah, I think an observation study over time during different times of the day by classrooms can just, and you can also get different observations. I think some students who love birds will just notice more of the birds, but then other students might notice more of like how the soil smells. I would definitely be the soil smell student.
I
I'd go
am the
straight
bird
for the.
student. I am definitely 110% the bird student.
I'll be straight in with the soil and be like, oh, it's wet today. I wonder what happened last night.
Do you so like going back to this idea of nature connectedness, do you think that it also gives sort of yeah, that push towards meeting SDG goals, if once they learn about them, but also really contributing towards this idea of planetary health, like not even one health. It's not segmented anymore, how our thriving is reliant on the ecosystems which we are embedded. What do you think, Aziz?
Yes, I think this is like a perfect mean like to introduce the SDGs. And maybe like I'm thinking that my school, maybe it's of course in the start it was challenging and still it is challenging, but my school is getting a reputation around the area. So there are many other schools that do not offer any nature education. They don't have the idea
Hmm.
because they're like owners and they are like the directors, and they have like some few of them are from economic background, few are from like physics and this kind of physical sciences, so they don't know about the importance of nature. Maybe this nature garden is just like a small point, it's like just a point, but we are trying to create something big outside of like to bring something out of this point. But maybe like experience is something, is practical. So with the passage of time, I am trying like to collect different perspectives and insights how to improve nature education.
Yeah.
So this is not the I do not at the
Yeah.
moment I'm not fully able like to achieve the my objectives, right? Well, objectives of teaching about nature, but it is like a cool breeze just to start something in an area which is where the eco conscious level is quite zero. You can say is zero. People don't.
Yeah, I think you have to awaken that eco-conscious level. But I do think that there's, not just because it can connect so well with science and botany, but also with English and creative writing, you can really harness the potential of, students who do enjoy writing. And I have some exercises that we try to do with another program, things like explode the moment, where you have to sit in nature, then just write all the different ways you can describe it, and you build vocabulary. And so and that's a very different way of using a nature-based study, but and I think, I think yeah, English and nature-based learning, like in creative writing, has a really nice,
Yeah, yeah.
I can only
I
think of the word in Urdu right now. I'm not, yeah, complements each other.
Yes, I see, I see. Yeah, actually, sometimes you also practice like narrative writing, right?
Yes,
In nature, to write something about nature.
yes.
And
And our Urdu poetry is full of nature. If you can use that, so that's another way to make it part of the, like I always think in Cambodia, Khmer proverbs are full of nature. They're all about nature. So
Yeah,
finding,
I mean, I keep thinking just people's interactions with nature and how they react to situations. Like one of the biggest shocks for me when I was doing my PhD research is that the phrase for pregnancy is like translated to the period in which you cross the river, like crossing the river. Which I was just like, that is how you say pregnancy, that in childbirth. I was very shocked. There's a river involved and it's dangerous and it's you don't know how deep it is and it's like really, really reflective of the kind of cultural diversity that each of our contexts have, no? I think a few of your colleagues, Aziz, said that they were kind of looking at the links between that. Maybe it's the biocultural diversity lab or something.
Yeah, biocultural diversity. They are just trying to actually our research is linked how like traditional knowledge changes with the change in culture or language, like the naming of the plants, like nomenclature, plant nomenclature. It is also like part of, biocultural diversity. Sometimes we are just thinking about the uses of plants, while the naming of plants, nomenclature, is very important, right? So biocultural diversity, and I am also like trying really engaged in cross-cultural studies and especially emphasizing on the nomenclature these days.
Absolutely agree with you. Just to kind of bring it back to our context of Cambodia, I've been struggling with rattan species,
Mhm.
about the nomenclature of all the different types of rattans there are. And I got into an article or like kind of a report about the nomenclature, and they said sort of because of colonization, like different European groups and botanists being sent to these places at different times of occupation and colonization, they kind of wanted to name the plant after them. So it would be the same plant, the same rattan, named by the French or the British or the Portuguese or something like that. But they would say, ah, it's the Portuguese blank or the French this, and they're the same plant. So we have like triple namings, which has made it increasingly difficult to have a consistent record. And, in terms of approaches, in Cambodia, there's a lot of people working on agriculture and utilitarian types of plants, useful plants, but those botanical surveys are still not complete simply because they do not have the personnel to kind of taxonomically identify what kinds of plants there are. And it's really frustrating for us because you have the expertise to identify and be like, this is it. But for us, we have all of these names and no botanists to really, taxonomists to really uh, contextualize it all. Because I've read with Munazay a lot of different botanical keys done by, for example, a lot of South Korean researchers or researchers from the US or Thailand, and with Thailand, it's kind of okay, or also Malaysia because of the kind of climate and the dispersion, it makes sense. But it's difficult for me to kind of interlink the observations of scholars from even further than the regional area because of, yeah, the lack of context. So maybe, as I joke to Munazay, maybe my future is actually doing another PhD and it's in botany or something. Is that my future, Munazay?
Another PhD? You,
Yeah. No, I'm
no,
just joking.
I
I
think
couldn't
we,
do that.
I think what we need to find is the name, like, yeah. If you're up for the another PhD, then I say go for it. But I don't think you are.
Yes, actually, like naming a plant is very difficult. Yeah, I have a friend who is an associate professor at University of Swat. So most of the time we are taking his help. I am, of course, I'm a botanist, but I am not a taxonomist. So this is like a real problem and a
Mm.
big challenge. But like collecting a herbarium and maybe like do you have any book published or something like flora? We have like Flora of Pakistan. There are 13 to 14 big volumes.
We have one.
One.
It's The Plants of Cambodia by Dr. D. Fun. It was in 2000, it was published, and it is, as her colleague told me, still full of some questionable, classifications. That's no fault, you know. There's also a collection of four different smaller volumes of medicinal plants in Cambodia, but it's increasingly hard to get a copy of that,
Yeah.
especially if it's in English. Even finding one in Khmer is a nightmare, actually. I
And
think,
I
yeah.
yeah, I think the other thing is inconsistency in language. So there's a lot of books that are in French and then Khmer. So then obviously I don't get much far in them. And then some you have which are English and then in Khmer or Khmer script, but not the phonetic. So there's a little bit of inconsistency. So we've really on our list of plants that we've worked on so far through our interviews, worked on more than, I think 3, 4 sources and tried to get the names through that. What is really good is that there is a herbarium in the university in Phnom Penh, so in the city, and they are really helpful, and it shows the value of having a herbarium, and they're trying to make their herbarium digital at the moment is a long process, but it's a really great resource and I think a teaching tool because the student who works in the herbarium is extremely helpful. And now I sometimes send him a name and he will send me a photo of it or this is what it looks like and the source. So that helps. Yeah. So I
I
think
think
I think your idea to maybe have a herbarium or start somewhere from that and a living library, which you already have, which is the nature space that you are cultivating. So yeah.
you have any, so like for Manaze and I, if I could speak on behalf of both of us and you can chime in, Manaze, one of the next steps in our work is that we really want to focus on citizen science because in the Cambodian context, there's a high working knowledge and not so much a formal scientific documentation process. So to offer some really like community involvement because they are the experts in where they've been living, you know, most of not their whole lives, we wanted them to help us take representative photos so we can have a data set that reflects where we're working according to the people that we're learning from. And I was just wondering, like, for you, what are your next steps for Crestwood School? Like, what are you aspiring for as you increase your, types of content and activities for nature integrated or nature guided education?
Yeah, actually, I did a study it's also part of my PhD. It was like a case study, perception and revitalization and perception of local plant knowledge within schools in Gilgit-Baltistan. So taking perspective and incentives from that study, maybe next time, like this is my future plan to introduce my students to interact with the community members, bring them
Mm.
community, train them how to conduct an interview, right? And or in another way, we can also engage the local knowledge holders to bring them to school. For example, my school, I have the authority, so I can bring like a local knowledge holder. So maybe sometime we can invite a local knowledge holder to teach our students inside the classroom. So maybe like will be like a bilateral relationship, bringing sometime out students to the community and bringing like community members experience people that are more engaged like with nature. So maybe like we have to give them a platform like to teach them about different kind of like plant knowledge is a very very wide area. It's not just
Mm.
about using medicinal plants or food plants. So this is my like future goal. We can uh, go along this way, and but it
So,
really
yeah,
depends on
sorry.
what are the further developments that are coming out. They will be coming out of my school.
Do you think that, and Manasseh, we can comment on this as well. Do you think that there's a hierarchy? Because you mentioned like having the authority to kind of give platform within plant knowledge. Because from my perspective, I feel like in Cambodia, it's being professionalized and valorized because now they have the National Center for Traditional Medicine, which really involves a lot of different plants. There's a lot of different agricultural units also doing research into these useful wild foods. Um, and people have just a general kind of veneration or kind of respect in terms of culture when it comes to traditional Khmer knowledge, which a lot of it has to do with medicinal plants and things like that. And I think for us, uh, it seems to be this disparity, right? Like the scientists and the scholars, we know that it's out there and we know that people know. It's just about documenting. That's for us. But do you think that there's, I guess the word is epistemic injustice happening with knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge in the region of Pakistan you're working? Like, do you feel like the local knowledge holders do not have a lot of power to really make, I don't know, claims or be respected?
Yeah, you know already about it. Like local plant knowledge like is a mutating complex. It always changes with time, so we cannot stop it. Number one.
Mm.
Number two, maybe the main reason behind this negligence of this, you say like plant blindness is that the local cultures in Pakistan, the local culture, local community, they don't know about the importance of their traditional knowledge. This is another aspect, right? So
That
these are
revival, yeah.
are ethnobotanists, are ethnobiologists that favors their knowledge or can recognize the importance of their knowledge. So this is the second problem. The third problem is like coming out from the policymakers. In
Yeah.
Pakistan, at least there are 2,000 ethnobotanical studies have been conducted just on medicinal plants. 2,000.
Wow.
I have downloaded all the articles.
All
Yes.
2000.
All 2000, wow.
Wow, you're such a nerd, Aziz.
He was trying like to make a review, right? To
Yes.
write a paper, but it was quite an extensive job. So I,
Mm.
right? It's like few years before I was trying like to get this data, but there was like a lot of data. But in reality, in practical sense, so this knowledge that is present inside the literature is not, is practically almost out
Disappearing, do you think?
right? It is just like somewhere in the memory of the elder community, right?
Wow, yeah.
But like youngsters, they don't know about medicinal plants. As I mentioned,
Yeah,
in,
especially
yeah.
urban
So
areas.
three different kinds of like we have in our country. They are the super like the major problem is, you know, from policy, like problems for policy makers. The decontextualized education, they do not, consider the local plant resources.
Hmm.
Lack of cultural knowledge, which is not like part of the conventional education system. Number two, like people are unaware of the importance of their ethnobotanical legacy. Hmm?
Yeah.
And so I forgot about the third one, which I mentioned in the very start. Hmm?
You mentioned the eco-conscious level of people and
Eco-
and their
So these are the two major problems because like from the community, there is no voice to be heard. If a community like pushes policymakers, of course, there are certain books in our education, like in our curriculum. So there are that are optional courses. So this like local plant knowledge could be like an optional course, right? Could be adopted like in a local context. Could be like place-based education. Could
Hmm.
design a mini course. But I have mentioned that 2,000 research studies have been conducted, but in practical sense, on educational level, they are like totally absent. Local plant knowledge is not part of the curriculum. So this is the main problem here, like in Pakistan. So we are trying like to highlight, and I am trying to highlight this problem in my articles since
Yeah.
3 to 4 years. Especially I am writing a section to how to revitalize this knowledge within schools. So we can just raise our voice. We are not people in power. Now,
But
So,
you're climbing a steep hill, I would say, or a mountain, because it is difficult to start from scratch and focus on this idea of, because deep inside, what the sense that I get is deep inside, you know that there was a time when this was valued. There was a time when elders who had this knowledge were more within society, but now rapid urbanization and a distance, when you create distance from nature, it starts to taper out. And I'm sure in your school, the younger students that are coming are very much more distant from it. So we can we this when we work in this field, we feel that sense of urgency because we remember that, oh, but yeah, there was elders that I was around, and we talked about plants growing up, and there was a familiarity which is going. So that sense of urgency, it's difficult to grapple with, I think.
yeah, sorry, Aziz, I'm going to say something real quick. I would like to say that what I find very interesting about both of your insights on this matter, especially knowing both of you and being this intermediary connector, is that there is this really deep frustration and tension and urgency, but I wanted to kind of bring it back to kind of, because what we've discussed today is a lot of benefits about, the nature education, but we also express the urgency, but we really need to kind of, if possible, give our listeners some sort of cohesive idea of where to go from now, right? We have aspirations that we'd like to do for our projects, but how can we, maintain this enthusiasm for stewarding nature, for protecting nature, for celebrating biocultural diversity, especially through plants and nature connectedness? How do we, move forward with positivity? Like even with the systemic and larger structures, like what is our takeaway for them? Like what would you say, Aziz? Like to convince someone in one sentence or two to adopt education that is nature-based or nature integrated.
As far my experience is concerned, I am working with Aga Khan Education Foundation. So this foundation is running different schools in North and West Pakistan. So maybe on government level, it is very difficult to convince the policymakers. But on the other hand, if we approach these organizations, because they are open to optional courses and they are very flexible, they favor locally based educational content. If we model a subject like a course on local plant knowledge, a mini course, a short course, a small course, and introduced in these schools run by these organizations. So this is, I think, the possible way we can do it immediately, but this needs like a kind of negotiation, a kind of, collaboration. And since I am collaborating with them since 2019, and I have conducted workshops inside their schools. So in my context, in Pakistani context, we can do this job, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, people are publishing on ethnobotany in Pakistan. These people and professors are sitting in Islamabad, in Karachi, in Lahore. They're just, I'm so sorry, like to mention it. They're just to get higher ranks and higher position within academia. They don't know, they have no concern about like, the
There's a
dying.
disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm writing like a project, and maybe I'm submitting soon to you. I have also submitted into European Research Council for Marie Curie research, and I
Great.
am
Good luck.
trying.
Good
Good luck,
luck.
Aziz.
So in February, I have targeted 3 communities in North and West Pakistan. These are the minority communities, linguistic minorities, and we are trying that through place-based education, how we can revitalize their knowledge. So one of the objective is to model like a course in order to teach the course inside the schools. So let's see. Maybe the result is we will be announced on 14th of February. So
Okay, wow.
the
Nice.
perspective, maybe like you can offer something more special.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Manase.
no, I think, I mean, to answer what Aziz mentioned and also to give our listeners a more positive overview, I think collaborations is one way to work, and finding like-minded people who, that's how Tao and I met, and now that's how we are meeting Aziz. It's this idea that there are organizations out there open to collaborations, have a desire to introduce innovative learning. And yeah, we face a lot of strict structural sort of embedded kind of ways of working in both the countries that we work in, and there are other countries out there in the world, but at the grassroots level, change can be made. And I always believe that if we can make that smaller change and influence other organizations to then adopt that practice, it's a job well done. So, there are other schools in Pakistan who could also then learn from yours, and maybe perhaps come to you for that curriculum. And I think, that's what I would hope for.
Exactly. And this was one of the idea, because what I was trying like to enter a different school in order to conduct workshops, and many of the schools, or like the principal and the administrative staff, they were not willing to conduct a workshop inside their schools. And then I decided I will open a school so that I can do
And
my
now
research.
maybe they'll see and they'll want it back. So that's what we hope for. How about you, Tao? What would you leave our listeners with?
I think on a very metaphorical way, as a proverb, I would have to say that if the soil is good, things will grow.
Yes.
So just creating a space for ideas and things to grow. So same thing with education, right? When you're in a good mindset, when you have access to resources or just a place of your own to really explore, then yeah, I think it's always possible. So if if someone asked me why do we need the Agri-Tech Centre, why do we need ethnobotany, why do we need biocultural diversity, I said if the soil is good, things will grow. If you want to
Yeah.
progress forward, you really need to have a good foundation. And I think by having a foundation which is contextualized in nature and wellness and all the benefits of having nature around you, things will feed into each other. So I guess that would be my takeaway. I'd like to thank our listeners for listening in on this third podcast episode for Plant Planet Plate. Thank you so much. Would you like to say goodbye, Aziz and Vinazay?
Thank you so much
Any
again. Thank you both, because you provided the platform and gave me the chance to express my concerns like about nature education, concerns like set concerns about why like policymakers are not endorsing the importance of ethnobotany.
No, thank you for being, here. And Tao, thanks once again for connecting myself and Aziz. And I feel very lucky to sort of have a conversation around this topic also in Pakistan, which is where I'm from. People might not have gathered that yet. So thank you.
We're going to have a
P.
so like Planet Plate Pakistan with Aziz spearheading it with you in Wednesday.
Yes,
All
let's go
right.
there. Bye bye. Khuda Hafiz. Bye.